You've likely heard the story of Adam, the first human being created by God. In the Hebrew Bible, the book of Genesis tells of God's creation of the world and its creatures, with humankind as the last of his creation. So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Before we talk about how Adam was created and later expelled from paradise for disobeying God's command, let's start with the origin of his name. The Hebrew Bible uses the word Adam in all of its senses, collectively, mankind, Genesis 1:26. Individually, a man, Genesis 2:7, gender nonspecific, man and woman, Genesis 5:1-2, and male, Genesis 2:23-24. Let me explain. In Genesis 1:26, God says, "Let us make man." The Hebrew word used is Adam. In this form, it is a generic noun meaning mankind, and does not imply that this creation is male. After this first mention, the word appears as Hadam, the man. But as Genesis 1:27 shows, the word is still not exclusively male. Genesis 2:7 is the first verse where Adam takes on the sense of an individual man or human. Yet the idea of sexuality and gender distinction is absent until the woman is created in Genesis 2:23-24, indicating that sex and gender are not an important part of the identity of Adam until this time. Therefore, Adam before the creation of women is, in a sense, not yet specifically male, and can be seen as both an individual and a collective human. Hence, not only Adam, but all humans are born from soil and God's vivifying breath. And God's remark that it is not good for Adam to be alone pertains to all humans. It is not good for humans to be alone. Genesis chapter 3 tells the story of the fall. A serpent persuades the woman to disobey God's command and eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge. The woman convinces Adam to eat the fruit as well. After that, they become conscious of their nakedness, cover themselves with fig leaves, and hide from the sight of God. God questions Adam, who confesses that he had eaten from the tree of knowledge, but blames the woman for his transgression, who in turn blames the serpent. God passes judgment, first upon the serpent, who is cursed to be despised by humankind, traveling on its belly and eating dust, then upon the woman, who is condemned to pain in childbirth and subordination to her husband, and finally, upon Adam, who was sentenced to work the accursed ground in sweat for his subsistence for the length of his mortal life. Death was the natural consequence of Adam's earthly nature, and was not part of God's punishment. However, the tree of life could have given him immortality. God determined that man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:22. To prevent Adam from achieving full parity with God, the first man and woman had to be driven out of the garden where the tree of life grew. Cherubim and a great flaming sword were placed east of the garden to prevent Adam and Eve from ever returning. Genesis 4 covers the events of life outside the garden, including the birth of Adam's sons Cain and Abel, and the story of the first murder, followed by the birth of a third son, Seth. The book of the generations of Adam, Genesis chapter 5, lists the descendants of Adam from Seth to Noah, with their ages at the birth of their first sons and their ages at death, except for Adam himself, whose age is given at the birth of Seth, his third son. Adam lives 930 years, up to the 56th year of Lamech, father of Noah. The chapter also notes that Adam had other sons and daughters after Seth but does not name any of them. In the entire Hebrew Bible, Adam appears only in chapters 1 through 5 of the book of Genesis, with the exception of a mention at the beginning of the books of Chronicles, where, as in Genesis, he heads the list of Israel's ancestors. While most of you are familiar with the story of Adam from the Hebrew Bible, there are many post-biblical Jewish traditions, books, and writings that didn't quite make it into the Bible canon. They are, in a way, the Bible equivalent of spin-off stories. one of the most popular being the story of Lilith, the first woman before Eve. Remember how at the beginning of this video we explained the meaning of Adam's name? Throughout history there have been many rabbis, puzzled by the fact that Genesis 1 states that God created man and woman together, while Genesis 2 describes them being created separately. They suggested that when God created Adam, he also created a woman from the dust, as he had created Adam, and named her Lilith. But the two of them could not agree, for Adam wanted Lilith to lie under him, and Lilith insisted that Adam should lie under her, and so she fled from him, and Eve was later created from Adam's rib. Other rabbis interpreted the two distinct instances of creation as evidence that Adam was first created with two faces, one male and one female, joined back to back. But God saw that this made walking and conversing difficult, and so he decided to split them apart. According to rabbinical literature, Adam was born with a body of bright light, identical to the light created by God on the first day. When Adam sinned, this brightness vanished, and he appeared naked. In the Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish apocryphal text written in the 2nd century BCE, we find how Adam had a daughter, Awan, born after Cain and Abel, and another daughter, Azura, born after Seth, as well as other 9 sons whose names are not mentioned. In addition to that, we are told that Cain took his sister Awan to be his wife, and Enoch was their child, while Seth married his sister Azura, and Enos was their child, thus ensuring the descendants of Adam's lineage. I have to also mention the life of Adam and Eve, better known in its Greek version as the Apocalypse of Moses, is a Jewish apocryphal group of writings that recounts the lives of Adam and Eve, beginning with their expulsion from the Garden of Eden and ending with the consequences of their deaths. The book provides more details about the fall of man, including Eve's version of the story and how she was deceived a second time, while Adam repented his sin in exile by praying for 40 days in the Jordan River. It is mentioned here that after the birth of Seth, Adam has 30 other sons and 30 daughters, while in the Latin version of this book, the descendants after Seth number 15,000 men, not counting women and children. Also in this Latin version, the fall of Satan and the angels who followed him was a direct consequence of Adam's creation, but I will go into further details about it when I talk about the Christian interpretation of Adam. The Greek Apocalypse of Moses gives us the untold details of Adam's death as well as his burial, with the mention that God himself grieved greatly when Adam died and commanded Archangel Michael to prepare the body for burial, and he was buried together with his murdered son Abel. The body of Abel, which Cain tried effortlessly to bury but ultimately failed, for the body always sprang up to the surface, and a voice came out of the earth, demanding that Adam must be buried first. Both bodies were buried in the place from which God took the clay to create Adam. After the burial, God calls Adam, whose body answers from the earth, and because he repented his sin, God promises Adam that he and all of his descendants will rise again, and Adam will sit on the throne of his deceiver. Remember, none of this is actually canon for mainstream Judaism or Christianity. It's labeled as an apocryphal book. As I was saying a while back, these books are the Bible equivalent of spin-off stories. Most scholars agree that the original version was written in the 1st century AD in a Semitic language. That version sadly did not survive, while the surviving versions, the Greek Apocalypse of Moses and the Latin life of Adam and Eve, differ greatly in length and wording. Each version contains some unique material, as well as variations and omissions, that I'd love to cover in a future video, but for now, I'll leave it to that. The story of Adam is quite a rabbit hole, so I recommend exploring the topic yourself. I've also provided some links down below. If it's your first time on the channel, consider subscribing. I plan on making more videos with Bible characters, and I have a series of videos that might also interest you. Regardless, thank you for watching, and farewell.